Hello and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Aussie writers and other creatives.
Hello, and I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well, and Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, ideas, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business.
Hi Lynn, how you going? Good to see you again. It has been a challenging week for me. I'm just heard that the kids are going back in October, so that's going to be interesting. But luckily, the one thing is I'm still getting paid. Touch wood. Are you still getting paid?
Well, yes, I am. I am. I'm actually very lucky because I'm really busy and lots of work happening. So that's great. But it is a lovely segue into today's guest and our topic, which is all about chasing payments and getting paid when you're a freelancer, something that keeps a lot of us up at night. Mm-hmm. And we're so pleased to have Paul Metcalf of Collectmore on the podcast this week. He tells us he's a podcast virgin, his first podcast. And many freelancers listening may have come across Collectmore, which is a debt collection business and comes up quite frequently in various freelance networks. We thought it worth having Paul in to talk about chasing money and being paid what you owed. So I'm going to tell us all a little bit about Paul. So Paul Metcalf is a nationally renowned debt collection expert with more than 20 years of experience and over $50 million in total debt collected. Oh, my Lord.
Wow.
He founded Collectmore in February 2013, having held senior management positions with one of Australia's largest debt purchase companies. And he quickly identified a gap in the market for ethical collections, where everyone, regardless of their financial situation, is treated with dignity and respect. Changing the negative perception of debt collectors is still one of his driving motivations. Well done. So in early 2016, Paul created the world's first debt collection smartphone app, which has been number one on the iTunes charts, along with being named Money's Magazine App of the Month in July 2019. He's got an infectious passion for not only collecting money, but also teaching others how to do so. He's a sought-after public speaker and regularly performs training seminars and workshops for SMEs who wish to improve their accounts receivable and collections functions. Paul, welcome. We're so pleased to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's just my pleasure.
Great to have you, Paul. I am a huge fan of what you do, as we were talking about before the podcast. And I'm also stoked that we are your first podcast. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah, you are indeed. I'm a late convert to the old podcasting, but yeah, I've done plenty of webinars and things. So yeah, hopefully it's not too dissimilar.
No, look, I never would have thought that a debt collector's, socials would be so addictive. But I have to say that the stories that you post on Facebook are always so good and so hilarious and teach me a lot about collecting money as well. Thank you for making debt collection a little bit less scary and more accessible to so many people out there.
No, everyone's very, very welcome. Look, as I said, I love doing what I do. I really do. And what breaks my heart more than anything else is seeing people not get paid. That's why I decided to join you today, is because freelancers they're probably the hardest hit, because the term freelancer just indicates one person. And they think, this one person, we can string them out for as long as we possibly can. What can they do? They're one person. That's why freelancers are at a disadvantage just by default. Like I said, I love teaching them how to get paid the money they deserve. We all work so hard. And as I said, freelancers, just as a result of them being one person, they do everything themselves. I hear stories of clients of ours working literally 30 hours straight to get things done for their clients, their demanding clients, and then them not to get paid. It literally just breaks my heart. I figured when I started the company, I would sort of paint myself as the expert in this industry. And like I said, I love helping people collect their own money. That's why I made the app. That's why I do seminars and training and that sort of thing, because as I said, there's a massive, massive, massive problem with small businesses being owed money at the moment. I think at last count, it was in the billions, like 25 billion, I think it was, in Australian small businesses. Australia is the slowest paying country on earth. So out of 168 odd countries, wow, we are the slowest. We pay our invoices on average about, I think it's 21 days late. Yeah. So yeah, that absolutely kills me. It really does. So I figure I've got all this knowledge in my head. Why don't I share it with people?
I bet you have a lot of tips for freelancers. What are some of the ones that you think to start with? Like, what should a freelancer think about when they're collecting debts or setting up their business right at the beginning?
Yep, it's a good question, Lynn. Look, to be honest, every bad debt can be avoided. Every single bad debt can be avoided. Debt collectors, we shouldn't exist. We should not exist as an industry because people can do what we do it themselves. The best way to prevent a bad debt is at the very beginning, have something in writing, get something signed by your client and establish what your expectations are up front. In 80% of cases, people are owed money because they've allowed it to happen. Inadvertently, they've enabled the client to not pay them. And it's generally because they're so desperate for new business and new work. And they think, wow, I've got a new client. This is fantastic. I can afford to be a little bit lax because I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to offend them because I want more work. It actually has the opposite effect. It's counterproductive. So at the very beginning, I say, find out as much as you possibly can about the client. Get something signed. Again, really, really important. People always ask me, how do we add debt collection fees to a debt? You've got to have something signed up front before you start work. You can't just add late fees. You can't just add default interest. You can't just add debt collection fees. You must have something signed in writing.
Wow.
So that's what I recommend.
Yeah,
absolutely. And for God's sakes, do some research on the person or the business that you're dealing with. You've got to find out who it is because you're the one on the line. You're the one that's going to spend all this time doing this work. And if you're not going to get paid, it's all for nothing. As bad as it is to be cynical and think negative, I think if you start at the point of this is a risk, okay, you can mitigate that risk. The businesses that do this the best are the ones that, like I said, they're so thorough with their processes, and it all starts at the very beginning. Because again, that's when the client is the most impressionable. They want what you offer. That's why they've chosen you out of all your competitors. They want what you offer. So it's about turning around that mindset and thinking I'm more valuable to them than they are to me.
Just getting back to what you said about getting something signed. So if you were to perhaps take on a small job and not do a contract where it was signed and you just took on the job, sent your invoice and that invoice wasn't paid, you couldn't then add fees to that or debt collection to that without having that signed contract. That's a really good point, I think.
Absolutely not. You cannot do it.
Okay. So the contract has to come first before anything.
Exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't even need to be a contract. It just literally needs to do just one page with a clause on there that says any invoices past due attract a 10% late fee or whatever it is. There just needs to be something. Okay. And again, clients, they will sign whatever you put in front of them. No one reads the fine print. Okay. But you've just got to get something signed. I think it just makes your business look a hell of a lot more professional. I see so many debts that just one-offs, for like tens of thousands of dollars. And I say to them, did you get anything signed? Oh, no. He was a referral. Referrals are really, we see so many referrals that go back.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's because they're a referral, people think they can trust them. But you can't. You spend a day doing what I do, and unfortunately, you can't trust anyone. And again, I know that's negative, but it's the reality. Honestly, it is the reality. So no, to answer your question, Rachel, no, you can't. You need something in writing to begin with.
Okay. Good advice.
So Rach mentioned that you're often sharing anecdotes on Facebook and how hilarious they are. Do you want to share some of those memorable, dodgy stories? I'd love to hear them.
Look, I mean, where do you begin? I've been doing this for 21 years. There was one, actually recently, I rang this guy. He owed about $2,500 to a client of ours. And I rang him and he was on the defensive straight away. It took a hit to his ego being chased by a debt collector. And I said, look, unless the invoice is paid, then I'm going to recommend a credit default against you. And he said, you can't do that. I'm going to ring my lawyer right now. And I said, okay, ring your lawyer. I said, if your lawyer's half decent, he'll tell you to just pay the debt because we can list a default. And he was adamant he was not going to pay. So he said, I'm going to ring my lawyer. And I said, ring him right now. I'll wait on the phone. We'll have a three-way conference call. And so he rings his lawyer and he said, I've got this bloody debt collector on the phone who's threatening to list a credit default. Can you tell him he can't do that? And his lawyer said, who's the debt collector? And he said, some Paul Metcalf bloke from some Collectmore. And the lawyer just laughed and he said, Paul Metcalf, mate, just pay him. He's the Messiah.
That's one of my favourites. Yes, I remember that from the Facebook group.
The lawyer was actually a client of ours. Of all the lawyers he could have phoned, he rang a client of ours. So look, he just, I just sat in the background and it really satisfied that the fact that his lawyer had, obviously told him to pay, which he did. He paid it then and there. But like I said, the irony of him ringing a lawyer who was a client of ours, it's
very
fantastic.
funny.
Look, we're in a small pond, aren't we? We really are.
Absolutely.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Look, I urge anyone who hasn't liked the Collectmore page on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, go and give it a like, because Paul shares some epic stories and they're just always really good value and really funny to see, how you get stuff out of people. I'm always amazed at the people who go on to lose vast sums of money because of their ego. They just don't want to toy with you. They just will go to court and do all this stuff. Are you ever just shocked by that? I think there was one guy who lost an extra 12 grand because
constantly shocked. Yep. The 12 grand, it was actually more. I think it was about 22,000 in legal fees he ended up paying.
Oh my goodness.
He just outright refused to pay. And this dragged on for it was about 11 months, I think, before he actually got the money. And I'd say to him, I said, mate, the only person you're hurting is yourself. He wouldn't answer the phone, so it was just text messages. I'd give him chances, if you don't pay it today, there's going to be another $2,000 worth of fees. No response. So we had another $2,000 worth of fees. He actually got a lawyer right at the end, at the very, very end. He finally got a lawyer, and the lawyer rang my lawyer and said, look, what's the payout figure? And the original debt was about 12,000. He ended up paying 34, I think it was. His insurance cost him 22,000, which is it's just mind-boggling. But again, Rach, you hit the nail on the head with ego. People don't like to be not told what to do as such, but they just, as I said,
don't like to lose.
They don't like to lose. That's exactly right. But you've got to pick your battles. And this guy, he was always going to lose. And we knew that for a fact because it was a company debt, and the company owned a property. So our client was the tiler that did some tiling in this investment property owned by this company, and he was trying to sell the property. So we knew that we were going to get paid one way or another. We knew we were going to get paid, and that's why it just didn't make sense for him to just keep avoiding us.
Yeah, funny.
But it's I see that all the time, and the legal fees are it's just a waste of money. It is an absolute waste of money. This guy, $22,000, he could have spent on absolutely anything else, but he paid our lawyer. He's got nothing to show for it. But the mind just boggles at some people's stupidity, really.
Yeah.
I just want to step back a little bit and talk about Collectmore as a company and how you guys started and how you got into debt collecting. Was that always something you thought you would end up doing?
No, absolutely not.
What characteristics do you need to be a debt collector?
I don't think anyone grows up wanting to be a debt collector. and I'm no different. I absolutely did not. It was the first full-time job I got as a 20-year-old. It was just, I just needed a job. I was partying a lot. I was living with my mates, and obviously that's expensive. And I went along to this. I didn't even know it was a collection agency until I had the interview, and they told me, and there was no training. I was literally just said, right, there's the phone. Here's the people that owe us money. Start ringing them. One of the first people I rang, that guy absolutely gave it to me. Like I've never been abused like that. Probably ever. And it was one of the first calls I made. I managed to turn him around somehow. Like, I've always been pretty thick-skinned. Our client that whose money it was, they were beside themselves with happiness. And ever since that day, I thought, geez, this is actually fun. This is such fun. And again, this was debt collection it still does, but not to the extent it did 21 years ago. That stigma around bikies and baseball bats and all the rest of it. And, even though I've got no tattoos and I don't ride a motorcycle, it was kind of cool saying that I was a debt collector. It was as a 20-year-old male. Like
Gave you a bit of cachet.
Oh, it was awesome. It really was. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it's all I've done ever since.
Yeah, and now you're being called the Messiah of debt collection in Australian circles by lawyers.
Exactly. Look, I've got a lot of experience. I certainly wouldn't say I'm a Messiah, but I do know my stuff, and as I said, I really love sharing that with people. And then people say to me, why do you enjoy the job so much? And it's satisfying. It really is satisfying getting money from people, but then giving it to the person whose money it is. That honestly, like I literally, sometimes my job saves people's lives. It really does. I recall one instance, this lady was owed about 75,000 and I managed to get that for her. And her business was literally going to go into liquidation. She was literally going to lose everything if I didn't collect that money. And I did. And I saved her business. Things like that never, ever, ever get old. Even after all these years, I still get a buzz out of reuniting people with their money.
How many people do you have working with you these days?
We've got 7 full-time collectors. So there's 8 of us in total. So we're only a smallish team. But yeah, look, we're very, very successful, as your listeners might know. We treat every debt like it's our own money. So, we pursue it like it's our own, which is why I think, we have the success that other collection agencies might not do.
And I know you must have a lot of freelancers coming to you. So what are some of the mistakes that you see people like us making over and over who end up, ringing someone like you?
Well, certainly not getting anything signed up front is a big one, but letting the client get away with it. Freelancers enable. It's counterproductive because they think to themselves, I don't want to be pushy because I want more work from them. But there's a difference between being pushy and wanting the money you deserve. There's a massive, massive difference. So, and again, with freelancers, they're at a disadvantage because it's just them. And the client knows that. That's the unfortunate thing. Like there's no accounts team, there's no legal team, and especially if the freelancer, obviously, they've got to wear so many different hats. They wear the customer service hat, they wear the actual person who's doing the work, they do the accounts, they do everything. And they find it very, very difficult to change those roles. Honestly, the best advice I can give to anyone listening, freelancers or otherwise, is the key to getting paid is by creating urgency. That's 2 words which I really hope resonate with your listeners. Create urgency. Last financial year we collected $6.5 million of other people's money, and they ask us, why did we manage to do something that they couldn't do? And it's literally because we create urgency. As soon as we get a debt, we explain what could happen if the person doesn't pay, and we give them really tight deadlines. Like I'm not talking 14 days, I'm talking like 5 p.m. today. So yeah, look, that's the key. Honestly, that is the key. I just don't see enough urgency from small businesses in trying to get their money. They're just too nice. Like I said, it's counterproductive. It has the opposite effect.
I've often noticed when I see these freelancers on sort of Facebook groups and everything talking about not being paid, and I'm often quite horrified by freelancers who continue to work for companies who aren't paying them. And they might be saying something like, I've been working for him for 5 months and he still hasn't paid, and and he's asked me to do more. And I'm always surprised how often people still work for companies like that, instead of saying, okay, I'm not going to do any more work until I get paid. Does that happen a lot?
All the time, because they think, I'm going to do more work and they're going to like me more, and then they're going to pay me because they like me, because I'm doing more work for them. But like I said, it has the opposite effect. The best way to getting paid is by stopping work, withholding services. As I said, if they're asking you for more work, they want what you offer. Yes. And you're more valuable to them than the other way around. You hold all the cards there. And so that's where you put your foot down and you say, no, I'm not doing any more work until you bring your account up to date. And even then, I need to decide whether or not this is a relationship I want to preserve and I want to maintain. And again, a lot of freelancers, they don't have that assertiveness. They just don't. Assertiveness is one of the key skills that all our new staff that we teach them when they come to us to work. You've got to be assertive. You can't let people walk all over you. I understand. I started my business from scratch as well. The first 6 months of me running my business, I was a doormat. I was an absolute doormat. I let people walk all over me. And it was only after, like I said, about 6 months did I realize, no, they want what I offer. They're more important. I'm more important to them than the other way around. And that's stayed with me ever since. And as I said, we've just grown and grown and grown. And that advice that I taught myself, that's never left me.
I totally agree with you. And I do think it is a lot about boundaries and also really valuing what you do and having that mindset that, and sometimes you don't have that at the start of your business, you sort of develop it. But some of the problems that I think people listening will resonate with them is if you're up against a big publisher that has payment drops a certain times a week or month or whatever, and you haven't been paid, sitting on the phone to those accounts departments and saying, I want something by 5 p.m. It's just not going to happen. It just will not happen.
No, you're absolutely right. It won't. And I would never encourage you to do that. It's all just about, do you understand when you expect to be paid? Okay. If you know when their pay drops are, you can kind of budget for it. And then you're not disappointed because you know when you're going to get paid. So I would never, ever, ever say to anyone, be that demanding on a big company. If you only get paid at 60 days in a month, then wait 60 days in a month.
Yeah.
There's no point ringing them on day 7 saying, I want my money at 5 p.m. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's just about finding that fine balance. Most big companies, if you know when you're going to be paid, great, fantastic. As long as you can budget for it, terrific. But again, that's the sort of thing you establish at the very beginning of the relationship. And that's what a lot of people don't do. They're not thinking, right, I offer trading terms. This person presents a risk. And every customer, regardless of their size, presents a risk. So like I said, the way to mitigate that risk is by understanding when you're going to get paid and asking that question. And if your terms are 14 days, say to them, look, our terms are 14 days. Do you foresee any issues with that? And that's when they'll probably say, no, look, we pay our suppliers at 30 days. Okay. And that's fine. Okay. But yeah, it's just, again, it's all about communication.
We have heard stories of people going and sitting in publishing houses in the lobby, saying, I'm actually not leaving until this invoice is paid, you know,
Love it.
and it working.
Absolutely. Of course. Absolutely. Hey, look, whatever works. I'm forever telling people that whatever works. You know, someone says, what are you doing here? You say, I'm waiting for my money.
Yeah. It doesn't look good, does it?
No, it doesn't look good. That's exactly right. I wish more people would do that sort of stuff. I really do. I sent a debt, I think 2 weeks ago. The customer was literally on this guy's street. He lived 4 doors down from him. And I said, have you been around there and knocked on his door and said, hey, mate, can I have my money? And he's like, oh, no, I'm a bit scared. You know, I was like, come on. You know, like he was happy to pay our commission, but I just thought to myself, that's nuts.
Yeah.
That's just nuts.
What are some signs that a client is going to be a late payer or a non-payer? Are there any signs or red flags?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. There's absolutely red flags.
Oh, tell us all about them.
Look, the biggest one I think is responsiveness. Emailing back, responding to queries, providing content is a big one. And I think that's probably with freelancers as well. We find a lot with web developers. So people that are building websites and things, getting content from the client. If they're slack with giving things and giving instructions, they're going to be slack with paying. So that's probably the biggest one, is that responsiveness. Another one is asking for discounts up front. Really, really, really massive red flag. So you quoting a job and then coming back and saying, oh, look, can you do it for a little bit less? Massive red flag. You want to avoid those clients like the plague, or you want to stand your ground and say, no, this is the price.
For small businesses, I usually ask for a 50% deposit. And I find that is a good way of sort of weeding out people. Do you find, is that a good?
Absolutely. 50% is great. I love 50% because it's shared risk. You're both invested at the same amount. They pay 50%. Then if they don't pay the balance, they've lost that.
Yeah.
And as I said, it halves your risk. So 50 is great. I love it. Again, you know, ideally, yes, it'd be great to be paid up front, but the reality is, you know, clients are going to expect time to pay, and hardly anyone pays for things up front because, again, there's no guarantee that you're going to get what you've paid for. We get requests for refunds all the time. People that have paid money to someone who hasn't delivered the work and then they want their money back. We'd probably get 2 or 3 inquiries for them a week. So yeah, 50 is great though. 50 is like I said, you're invested exactly the same amount.
Well, I have to say that I recently had somebody who wanted me to do some work, and I asked for the 50% deposit, and they said, oh yeah, sure, we'll pay it. And then I asked a couple of times and they didn't. And then I chased them on and off, and then actually it never came. So I just, that's fine. But the good thing was, spent a little bit of time chasing, but at least I didn't do the work. I didn't start the work until I got the and I told them I couldn't start the work until I had the 50% deposit. And I feel like I escaped. I dodged a bullet.
You dodged the proverbial bullet, believe me.
It's just a good, if they're not going to pay the deposit, they're not going to pay the rest, really.
Exactly. And I think, you know, trusting your gut's a big one as well. Just that gut feeling. You've just got a feeling someone's just a little bit off. You know, it could be as well that they're quite demanding. They're quite kind of patronizing because they see you as just the freelancer. You know, and as I said, you know, that's a big one for me. So how polite they are, you know, do they have manners? If there's no manners, there's no politeness, and there's any sort of sense of entitlement, again, that's the sort of client you want to, you know, give a wide berth to.
Great advice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We often get people that ring us and just say, right, I want you to collect this for it. Or I get messages through the Facebook page saying, I'm owed $200, collect it for me. Yeah, no, seriously. And I'll write back and I say, excuse me. And I'll say no. I'll absolutely say no. Yeah, just again, a lot of people just have this sense of entitlement that they're the customer, they're right, and we should be grateful for their work. No, absolutely not.
Yeah, you see that at Rachel's list as well a lot. Just unbelievable rudeness in emails and stuff like that. Yeah.
And they just think, you're a freelancer, you can work through the night, pull an all-nighter, No, I'm not pulling an all-nighter. Not a chance. If I'm going to pull an all-nighter, you can pay for it. You can pay me triple.
Yeah.
Just really. Fortunately, obviously, they're the minority, which is great. Most people, 99% of our clients are awesome. And they, like I said, they come to us because they know we're the best and they're polite and they ask, could you please collect this for me? But yeah, if there's no manners there, I will absolutely say no. I'm forever saying no to people that want their debts collected. I don't care how much commission I'm missing out on. It's just, again, I don't want to be associated with people that don't respect what I do. So yeah, I really encourage every business owner to have that same attitude.
Yeah. Do you think that small businesses are the biggest risk of not paying? Or do you think there's risks with large corporates as well?
Yes, absolutely. Purely because the large corporate, obviously, they're large for a reason. They've got the cash flow. Yeah. Whereas small businesses, I always look at, do they have a website? That's a big fun as well. If there's no website and they're asking you to do thousands and thousands of dollars worth of work, I would, I'd err on the side of caution there.
Interesting.
So again, this is all the stuff you can do before you say yes at the very outset. Find out who you're dealing with. Who is this person? Who is this company? There's no way you can go to a bank and get any sort of loan without filling in an application and them doing credit checks and them doing some due diligence on you. It just doesn't work like that. But small businesses, we do it. We're always forever doing it. We're because like I said, we're transfixed by the money. We're transfixed by the thought of getting paid. But something I say all the time is an invoice isn't worth the paper it's written on unless it gets paid.
So talk us through, how COVID has affected payments and non-payments and your business as well, if it has.
Yeah, it has. It absolutely has. We're certainly, we're a small business as well. We're not immune. We've seen a downturn, unfortunately, due to COVID. And that's purely because businesses don't have as many customers as they used to. And if they don't have many customers, there's not as many people not to pay their debts. And if people aren't paying their debts, then they're not getting sent to us to collect. So yeah, we have seen a downturn. It's funny, a lot of people assume to be the opposite side. They think we'd be flat out because no one's got any money. But it's not, unfortunately. But yeah, look, fingers crossed. I don't think it's going to be, certainly next year. I'm already looking towards next year. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as bad as this year in 2020 was, but we just don't know at this stage.
I'm not sure that everybody wants to call in a debt collector, obviously. Hopefully you're the last resort. So what sort of things should you do first when you're chasing payment before you call in you guys?
Good question, Lynn. Pick up the telephone and ring the customer.
Yeah.
So we rely on email too much.
People are petrified of the phone.
Yeah. Oh, really?
They are petrified of the phone. Yep. We often get debts where, and again, when we get sent a debt, we often ask for like email trail and things as well, just so we can get a feeling of what they've done. And we can see multiple emails, email, reminder. And we'll ring the debtor and we'll say, look, can you please pay it? And they'll say, yep. And they'd say they literally never phone me. If they'd have picked up the phone, I would have paid them. All they did was send reminders. And I just can't understand it. But they're petrified of the phone. People don't like that confrontation that talking on the phone brings. But it is the single greatest asset you have is the telephone. Yeah. So pick up the phone. Use different numbers as well, because often clients will be cagey and they'll save your number in their phone. They'll mark it as do not answer, owe them money or something like that. So yeah, use a different phone, ring at different times. Always hit redial as well. I urge people to hit redial, try twice. Because again, what you're trying to do is create that urgency. And someone's more likely to call back if they see 2 missed calls rather than just the one. And here's the greatest tip I can give you listeners, guys. It is ask everyone you speak to, what is the most you can pay today? So many people think in absolutes. They think everything or nothing. No one thinks part payments. So ask for a part payment. Ask, and the best way to ask is by saying, hey, look, what is the most you can pay today? It's a closed question that will lead to just one answer. And 99% of the time, it'll be something, and something is always better than nothing.
I love that. I've seen you mention that on the Facebook group a few times, and it is something that doesn't occur to us because we just think we want the whole invoice paid.
Yeah.
So we'll
Absolutely.
put it off for another few days or whatever, and then it drags out again. I've got your app on my phone. I haven't had to use it, touch wood, but talk us through how that works, how people can use the templates on there, what's on there for freelancers.
Yeah. Look, the app it's like the step before us, if that makes sense. And I wanted to create something that people could use without having to, and like I said, we're a very successful business, don't get me wrong. And I love how much revenue we turn over, but I feel absolutely so sorry for the fact that we have to charge these businesses the commission when they've done nothing wrong. It's their customers' fault that they're having to engage us in the first place. So I wanted to create something that would give them something back without having to use us, if that makes sense. And look, we make money from the app because the full version costs $8. So, every time someone buys the app, obviously we get revenue from it. So we do make money from it. But yeah, like I said, I just wanted to create something that would give them the opportunity to try everything before sending it to us. So basically the app, you tell it how much you're owed, when it was due, what sort of entity the customer is, whether they're a company or an individual. It asks you some questions about how overdue the debt is, and then it will analyze your answers and it will tell you exactly what to do. So it'll always give you different advice. It will give you a list of, I think there's 8 templates in there. So email and SMS templates. So it will send them to the customer for you. Everything's scripted for you. All you need to do is, again, just put the amount in and the due date, and the app will send those templates for you. There's a letter of demand in there as well, which works exceptionally well. So the letter of demand is when you email it to the customer, it goes out as a PDF. So it looks really professional and everything. Another thing it does is it allows you to, obviously you can call the customer from your phone, but it gives you a script as well. So it tells you exactly what to say. Because again, people I say to them, pick up the telephone and they say, well, what do I say? The app will actually tell you what to say. So yeah, no, it's really cool. And probably the best benefit of it to both the user and to us is that if the app doesn't collect the debt for them, you can refer it to us from within the app.
And you've already got a bit of a process started, haven't you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's really is a marketing tool for us as well. Like because of the app, it's been responsible for around $500,000 worth of commission for us. Because if the app doesn't work, there's only one debt collection agency the person's going to use, and that's us. There's like a portal to us from directly within the app. So yeah, so there was some method to my madness when I was making it. We are in business to make money after all, like everyone is. But yeah, I just thought that's a really cool way to help people, but also allow them to use us if they need to.
So how do you find your customers? Is it word of mouth, or do you advertise? And that
No, we don't
changed?
advertise. It's just word of mouth. You said it before, Lynn, we've got a massive following. We've got 2.5, nearly 3,000 followers on Facebook. It's just word of mouth. I really rely on people that say they'll post on business groups on Facebook, need a debt collector. Can anyone recommend one? And people will say, collect more. So yeah, it's just word of mouth. We don't advertise at all. But that's taken a long time to cultivate that sort of following. Like I started doing this content marketing about 6 years ago. So it has taken a long time, but I'm actually shocked that more people don't do it. I mean, people don't want to be sold to, they want to buy from. And I think they're only going to buy from the expert in their field. And I think anyone can do it. I really think anyone can do it. Just tell people what you do. Give them, like, case studies work really well as well. People love hearing our case studies, and I love sharing them. But give away some free information, some free knowledge. Be generous with what you know. Like I said, I can't believe more people don't do it. Like, we're definitely the only collection agency that shares, what we do. So yeah,
it takes the stigma away too, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it hasn't stopped you getting clients sharing all that knowledge and that information.
Absolutely not. That's exactly right.
If anything, it's got people coming to you more.
Yeah, exactly. I hope people. I hope people don't have to use us. I really do. The reality is, they will, because debt collection will always exist. There's no doubt. Like I said, I would much rather they collect their own money, because again, you know, if I'm the one that's kind of taught them how to do it, then they'll share that with other people, you know, and not everyone's going to get paid. I'm a realist at the end of the day. Not everyone's going to get paid. You know, there's always going to be that need for people like us. But as I said, I love sharing what I do and what I know with people that need to know this sort of stuff.
Look, Paul, it's been so great to talk to you. Is there anything else that we haven't asked you about that you'd like to, you know, share with our listeners?
People say, you know, what's the key? What's your secret, Paul? You know, how do you collect all this money? I can't stress how important it is that it's create urgency. Those two magical words, create urgency. Probably about 80% of the money we collect, we manage to get with one email, and it's the first email. And you've got to think to yourself, okay, they've paid Collectmore, you know, let's just use, for instance, $7,000. Yesterday, when I called them, they didn't respond. You know, why on earth have they paid Collectmore and not me? And it's because we're a collection agency. By default, that creates urgency. And the email we send these people, we explain what could happen if they don't pay. That creates urgency. So like I said, it's not necessarily that people don't want to pay. They do. I really believe, and this might sound strange from a 21-year career debt collector, but people want to do the right thing. They want to pay their debts. They do. No one likes owing money, but they will only pay when they have to. And as I said, we've got to create that need for them. We've got to let them know what could happen if they don't pay. We've got to sell the benefits of paying as opposed to not paying. But yeah, look, create urgency is the biggest thing. I really hope that that's two words that really, really resonate with the listeners of this podcast. I'm very, very generous, and I'm always available if people want to reach out to me personally with my advice. So look, anyone can contact me at any time and ask me what they should do, and I'll always be happy to help. And
where can people find you, Paul?
Just collectmore.com.au. So COLLECTMORE. We've got the Facebook page obviously as well, but my mobile number is all over that, or they can ring our office and ask for me personally.
Fantastic. Oh, Paul, that's been so good. And I think it's actually quite encouraging, because I do think that some of our listeners might, if they get into this sort of situation, they might feel like there's no way out. And this, I think, is a very positive way out to get what they're owed, and to know that there is a procedure that they can follow that is probably not as traumatic as they thought it could be. So I think that's really good and positive. So thank you so much for sharing everything. And we'll put all your contact details in the show notes, which you can get on your podcast app. And there'll be a little bit of a summary of the episode as well. And you can find out all about Paul and Collectmore.
Thanks again, Paul.
You're very welcome, guys. Thanks very much for having me.
See you. Bye.